Yeah, you were in the back of my head today because I actually captured earlier, and you popped on the Comedy 103.
Oh shit, did I?
Yes. So I'm just good with voices in general, and I'm listening to this I'm like, I fucking know, who's this? Like, famous comic, no, and it pops out. I was like, oh shit, it's fucking Jose Macall. So I busted out my phone, and I got a little footage of it, so I'm reading off your name. So at the end of this podcast, if you watch on YouTube, stay to the end, because I'm going to throw that clip on there. Jose Macall on Denver's Comedy 103.1.
Yeah, man, I've been trying to get that. I've been trying to find it.
So, my last podcast I did with Milian Alyanovich, he and I had a conversation about joke theory, and then it caused a little bit of a debate at the end of it, because I had said, he brought up how Hannah Gadsby's special talked about, he's like, how we could all learn from that special, and she talks about joke structure and how she takes you down a dangerous path and then twists it at the end to, it's funny, and we talked about how, that was the fundamentals of joke writing. And then I always do an after podcast with a good mic. I'll just do a synopsis of what we talked about, and in that I said that I didn't find that that's the best way to do comedy is the 1-2 twist. Yeah, I said the H word. I said, I even find it kind of hack. So, in that vein, I'm glad I have my next podcast is an awesome joke writer. What is your theory? What is a joke? What is it? Just from the fundamental, where do you start from? Is there different kinds of jokes you rely on? Do you have one theorem? What's a joke to Jose Macall?
Well, a joke is just something that's going to get a laugh. Ideally, that's it. It's not. I hate when people are like, "Oh, that's a something joke." It didn't work, but that's not a joke. It's not a joke. No one's laughing, so you're just saying words. So, regardless of how you get there and what the methodology is and all that, I've got, I like to think of it like I watch a lot of kung fu movies, and I'm like, it's Southern singing style, bad stuff. That's how comedy is, and it's analogous to that. There's different styles and types and techniques and ideas, but if people aren't laughing, you're not telling a joke. How you get there, I guess, like personally, for me, I'm very orthodox in the, like, set up punchline, whatever. I'm only recently trying to break that, but ideally, life up with what the masters figured out,
Right. See, I love, a lot of people don't know, my favorite comic is a guy by the name of Robert Schimmel.
Mm-hmm.
And he has, I always give this example as, like, one of my favorite jokes ever, and it's most certainly not classic punchline, but I just love it. He says he's at the circus with his kid, and there's a bear riding a tricycle, and his daughter goes, "Daddy, how do they get the bear to ride the tricycle?" And he goes, "It's easy. They nail his feet to the pedals and they beat the shit out of him." And so that always just stuck out to me as like, what is that? Like, that's not a joke in any classical structure. It's just this hilarious fucking thing he says.
It is though. He just didn't set it up how he typically set up a joke. But what's going on there is you're expecting him to say something nice and tender for the child, and he gives you the swerve of just pure brutality. It's a joke.
Yes.
He just didn't say, and blah, 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 blah. All he did was give you the insight. But the swerve still happened. The punchline's still there.
I like that. Yeah, that's 100% what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the invisible story. I've been obsessed with that idea recently, that a lot of times, yeah, I guess even in that, because I'll get bogged down in the A, B, C, and then you think I'm going to say C, but I say D. And I think a lot of, like, my favorite jokes are the ones where I give you A and D, and then B and C flash in your head.
Right.
And
people just say the word without you saying it. If they have rape appear in their brain and you haven't said it, or kidnapping or whatever, that's the ideal, because then they lost the secret kind of connection that people have.
Yes, very good. I like that. You're fucking.
He does this thing. If you watch him in Hill, I learned to call like his little riff. Not call, but like figure out what he's doing. He'll give 2 details about a character, and then did not say the character, people figure it out.
Huh.
He'll reference the villain from Inspector Gadget, and he'll be like, this guy looks like he's got an iron hand at the cat. If you do that, you fucking throw it in their brain. That usually gets a laugh.
I see. You know what? I was listening to Wanda Sykes one time, and I wrote down in my... Yeah, I wrote down in my notebook that she did. I wrote it down, and I called it a secret list. She starts listing, like, what, like you're eating rice on December 5th in Vietnam, you know, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, she's talking about this movie. And it flashes in your head without her having to say it. That's
exactly. That's the ideal. That's how you want jokes to hit. If you're doing anything that's going to be risque or kind of edgy or whatever, like that's the ideal the way you want to do that.
Right. Yeah, I have an edgy joke where I say that if I had a daughter, like how woke I am, and if I had a daughter, I'd be stoked if she was trans because I always wanted a son, you know. Yeah, and it's super dark, but it's funny how it starts like kind of pro-trans, but then tucked in that invisible joke is an anti-women joke, you know. So it's fascinating. Yeah, that's a great point you brought up. Even my Robert Schimmel example still does fall into both categories. It is a twist, and it is...
It's your expectation.
Yeah.
All comedy is you're getting past the mental defenses of whatever they have. It's the same thing with fear. I've said this before. Fear and humor are the exact same thing reflected. Fear is you insert people's expectations to push them away. Humor is you shoot their expectations to bring them closer.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. I like that. Corey Stevens and I talked about how faces can be punchlines. And the same thing. It's like, I'm going to say something, and then the face is either going to contradict or over-confirm, and it's going to tell you a little story.
That's really hard to do, man. I don't know that I have the fortitude to look in the mirror and make faces and be like, that's a funny face. Like, I don't...
Yeah, I actually...
It's like a hard skill to figure out.
I've figured out that I'm good at faces purely because of peer feedback. People would say, it's like, you need to make more faces, and I'm like, oh, you're crazy. And I hear it from someone else, it's like, maybe it's true, and then someone else, it's like, all right, I need to fucking, like, videotape myself or something.
Dude, it's more tools in the box, and yeah, if you're hearing from it, fucking do it. I could do that. You got kind of like a super villainy face. You can make some fun stuff. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to look into that because that's super fast. And that's, once again, like we talked about, it's the endless Rubik's Cube. It's just like, man, there's so many techniques, and then at the master level of this, you just like drop the techniques and you are the technique, you know?
Exactly. People do shit in your style.
Yes, that's so fascinating how people can take small things and make them into a style. One thing that I do a lot of video editing, and I was watching a video where this guy was talking about Edgar Wright of the fucking Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and how he took like what are called whip pans, where you whip away from one thing and then you whip into the next thing, and then you cut the two whips in the middle, and it looks kind of seamless, like all you did is move the camera and now you're in the next scene. People have been doing that for 100 years in film, but he took this small whip pan and literally made a style out of it, to where now if you try to, when you do whip pans, you got to be careful. It's like, it's pretty Edgar Wright, you're kind of stepping on his thing. It's like, how the fuck did he's so fucking good at this one thing that he now owns it? That's so crazy.
Yeah, it rules.
So fucking another question I always ask people, that was awesome. That might be one of my favorite joke theory sections that we've had. You definitely boiled that one down. So I always ask, what's, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're all on shutdown, but maybe before the pandemic, what's good in comedy? What's awesome? What makes it worth doing? What do you love in comedy right now?
Right now, there's more opportunities and facets and mediums and ways to reach people and crowds and freedom than there's ever been before.
I agree.
So, there's a state of things. As much as people bitch, like, it's water, it's blah, blah, blah. It's like, whatever, man. The way, like, shit used to run was underground and word of mouth. And now we have the internet, we have fucking texting and Facebook, and it's possible for you to carve out a niche. And I think that's a tight future that we're looking at, you know, or at least right now in the state of things. Even if it's the pandemic, like people are saying, when this blows over, people are going to be fiending for shit to do and places to go. Well, write those jokes on me.
Fuck yeah. Well said, my friend. Well said. So then we always end on the converse. Fucking, what sucks about comedy, philosophically or, you know, pandemic excluded? What's the kick in the balls about stand-up?
I think the thing that sucks, it can feel directionless a lot of the time. It's hard to tell when you've made progress. It's hard to tell if this is going to pan out. What's guaranteed today isn't. You know what I mean? I had one of my best stuff ever at comedy work, and now the pandemic came out, I'm going to get that taken. You know what I mean? Just random shit like that. Where it's like, and then you're spoiled and whatever. Yeah, that kind of sucks, the directionlessness of it, and not really knowing the hard numbers. You don't know where you stand. You know what I mean? Like, I feel lost in shuffle in this city a lot of the time. And it's nothing personally about, you know, anyone or the scene or anything. It's a numbers game, and the fact that there is no order, there's no definition is the problem. You kind of have to define and figure out and get meaning on your own, which a lot of the time sucks because it's the hardest way to go about it.
That is true. Corey Stevens and I talked, and he said something very profound. He said, in the next half decade to decade, our job is to be funny, but at the end of it is like his main point was to be memorable. He's like, if we can work on being memorable, that can essentially change you from just, you know, grinding for 10 years and being respected by your peers versus, you know, maybe making some money and getting a couple looks. So I've been fascinated with that.
Yeah, man, that's solid. Yeah. I also think, there's no regulation. That's fucked too, man. You never know, you know what I mean? All the handshake clubs and all the bullshit, and people take favor, so many opportunities here and there, but like I said, you gotta embrace that chaos. You gotta go with that negativity and be like, all right, well, what do I do inside of that?
Fuck yeah. Well, that's it, man. I think that's a pretty good place to end off. Fucking don't get lost in the shuffle of your own mind, because there's people below you who are envious of you. There's people above you that are gonna shit on you, and in the end of it, fucking, you know how good you should be at stand up, and that's the only thing you're competing against.
Yeah, could I ask one something? This is a thing, real quick.
Yeah, man.
Before Sam T left to Vegas, he El Torito said a bunch of like bullshit to all of us and all the young comics.
Okay.
And one thing that he said that stuck out to me, and I always like to call other comics this shit because it's cool. He's like, it never changes. He's like, it never goes away. It only starts harder. He's like, I was sitting there, and I was like, man, I can't get into this festival. How do I work in this festival? And Hippie Man was next to him, and he was like, how do I get this next late night thing? How do I get, you know? And next to him was Ian Holland and Ben Rowe. They were like, how do we fucking pitch the show to the network? Like, it never ends, and it never goes away. But just keep that vibe. You gotta love this shit and love it.
Wow. Yes, that's true. Some of my favorite podcasts of my favorite comics I listen to, and you say, you still feel like nobody? Like you're, you know, I listened to Tuesday with Stories with Joe List and Mark Norman. It's like, you open for Seinfeld and you open for Louis C.K. It's like, you guys are like gods in my world, and they're like, oh, we're shit, we're terrible, we're beyond nothing.
Yeah, man, no one knows, man. Yeah, it never changes. You know, that struggle ain't gonna go away. So, man, we got this, homie. That's what I think.
Fuck yeah, Sam Talent.
Hell yeah, man.
Fuck yeah. Well, I appreciate you, my brother, and most likely, perhaps I'll see you at a digital open mic soon.
Oh yeah, see you around.
See you later.
Good, man. Take it easy.
Bye. Hi guys, it's Josh Grambo. Holy shit, Jose Macall. That was definitely my favorite joke theory section, and of course it came at a time when both of our phones had
garbage connection, so the audio sounds like shit. But if you're hungry for comedy knowledge, it was worth it. Check him out, Instagram, @Macall for info. Fucking hilarious Instagram handle. So that's it. The show's called Comics with GRAMBO, and I am out.
Welcome to bonus stage. Reload!
Pregnancy has symptoms like a disease or something, right? Like if a bee came and stung you and made you swell up and throw up every morning and your nipples were all sensitive, people would be like, that is a poisonous bee. Like, stay away from that bee. Like, especially if a person crawled out of you after 9 months, they'd be like, that is a very poisonous bee. Stay away from that bee. So what is that, a killer bee? No, it's the opposite. It's the much worse. It's the responsibility. You guys know that Noodles & Company won't provide the company no matter how much you ask? I'll end with this. This is a controversial joke. I do will end with it. Guys, all right, stick with me now, okay? I want to put a definite, hardcore limit on the amount of people that we allow into this country, but we make it so that anyone, anywhere in the world, can challenge someone here to a showdown of some sort. And whoever wins gets to stay. We film it, and we call it dual citizenship.
Jose Macall.